Okay. Thanks, Heather. You know, um, yeah, I've done a lot of reading and studying over the years, for about 15, because I started with my undergrad with the CFLE. So it's a certified family life educator. So I never intended after 5 years of straight 5 years of going to school with that I'd ever be a therapist. And so another 4 years on top of that and 4,000 hours of clinical work, it's like, here we are, not an expert, but, things other, but like, I've had my own kids, I've had some foster kids. So here's the teens. I like specialized in taking in teens into my home for about 10 years. And so, of course, all mine 3 or almost grown. I've got a 17-and-a-half-year-old left. So here's the teen stuff. So 2 weeks ago, we just did emotional coaching in general for, a lot of the smaller kids, like, okay, how to do emotions, how to turn to your kids' emotions, how to emotionally coach them. And I've got those listed still in this email, or I mean, in this PowerPoint of just the 5 basic steps of emotional coaching. And I've got quite a bit of slides in this presentation. So you're going to get a recording and this PowerPoint and the handouts if you tune into this class. So she will send you those so you can watch them later. So there's some of the slides that I'll probably skip through to get through so we have time for questions at the end. But so I'm going to go pretty fast. That's the thing. And so we have to, but there's so much good information. I added a couple other things in here. So it's just more information that you can tap into if you want to later. You don't, I'm counting teens now as 10 and up because statistically the brain's developing differently, faster, younger, it's maturing way younger. It was about 13 when Brainstorm, so Brainstorm is a book by Dan Siegel, and all of these references and everything I talk about is in the end of this PowerPoint. So all the books and anything that that I talk about is always referenced at the end of these. But Dan Siegel has a Brainstorm book, and he came out with this just a few years ago, and it's a book for the teen and the parent to read. So both. An excellent book. It talks about how the brain develops and what's going on, but we are developing younger and younger and younger, so that's just what it is. So yeah, 10, 11, and we can talk about puberty and all that stuff, but that's what's happening. So, I mean, preteen, it's like, yeah. So anybody that you know of that is struggling with their kiddo right now, school, all this stuff, any, 7 and up, 10 and up, 13 and up, 20 and up, I mean, we've got lots of those living at home too. So this all applies to that too, but we're going to kind of focus, I'm going to hone in on the teens and a little bit more what's going on with them, especially right now with COVID and the loss, grief, and trauma of not being in school, right? So I'm going to go over all those things, and we're going to talk about emotional coaching, of course. We're going to talk about some coping skills. We're going to talk about self-discipline because that's the schooling part. It's really been difficult, right? I mean, the self-discipline. And I'm going to explain what that means. It's a little different than what you've thought of probably. So with that said, let's go to the next. So I always kind of put this on the front of my slides. Of course, here's the benefit. Just so you know, that's kind of what Blomquist offers, and I have put some crisis lines, all kinds of different kind of crisis lines at the end of this PowerPoint too. So yes, of course, right now we're doing phone and video counseling and these webinars that are weekly, multiple ones every week. So make sure you tune into those. And if I mention something from the past, like Love and Logic's parenting, then you can request those videos from the past and from Heather, and we'll send you out that other video that you missed, maybe, because we have about a half a dozen of them. So any of them that that you have younger kids with, that or any parenting, it's just basic parenting of those videos. Okay, so with I'm going to shrink this in. So with Gottman, John Gottman is who I reference when I'm talking about emotional coaching, because of one book that he wrote, How to Raise an Emotionally Intelligent Child. So this is just the beginning of, here's the little 5 steps. I have them in depth in later slides. So much of today's popular advice ignores the world of emotions. So we go straight to the behavior. So he says, but it regards the feelings that underline that behavior. So disregard. So disregarding the emotion and going straight to the behavior is one of the biggest mistakes we make as parents. And we've all done it. We've all gone to, why are you acting like that? Why are you throwing a fit? Stop it. Why are you crying? What's going on? Why did you hit your brother? That's the behavior, right? So it's always why, stop it, why. And we've got to scale back and go to the behavior, the underlying issue of the feeling first, because we have a thought that comes in, then we have a feeling, and then we have a behavior. So that's one of my favorite quotes of Gottman, and he's the relationship specialist of anyone. He has 45 years of research on relationships. He does do a little bit of children stuff, of course, in several books like this, but he's a very awesome relationship researcher. So, okay. So this is where we start. I feel like we have to start with this. We have to understand, and I'm going to get into the emotions later, but we have to understand first some self-discipline. So like I said, here's the behavior part, but we're going to get into the emotions and how to do that. But the problem, this is about self-discipline in schooling and self-discipline in chores and just routine. Right now, since we've been in this 6 or 7 weeks of COVID, we are starting to see a routine now, a different routine, and we're trying to figure that out. And that is our balance, right? So our balance in self-discipline has to start there with our physical, mental, social, emotional / spiritual. So emotional, spiritual go together. So the thing is this is just a handout. I just want you to review it. It's super, super important. It's my own of several different books, but and how this, and a little bit of my own. I love the word higher purpose. I use time, energy, and money as your value system. So it starts with self-discipline. It's just the first part. So how do we have a routine? It's a fixed program. How do we have responsibility? Have a duty. Reassurance is fears that are unseen and are real. So we have to reassure our teens that this is real. I have an unseen trauma, an unseen crisis, an unknown. And that's what the problem is. It's unknown and unseen. And so our brain just can't wrap ourselves around it and go, wait, what's going on? Why am I not in school? What about graduation? What about my friends? So there's loss, grief, and trauma from those fears because it's unseen. So we have to coach the loss, grief, and trauma and the powerless. So we're starting to take back some power. We're trying to figure out how to do online schooling. We're trying to figure out how to do graduation. We're trying to figure out how to do an year-end reward system. See, we got delayed gratifications next. Reward system. I have talked to dozens and probably about 100 people in the last 6 weeks about a reward system. So the thing is what has been taken from us as a reward system? And I go through this every day. I'm like, wow, okay, my gym, my, my massages, my eating out, where I spend my money, my stop at, a clothing store on my way home from work just to walk around a store, all of my reward systems that are scheduled and planned, because I'm really good with my reward system, because that's what sends us into motivation to do something again. So this is an example. We're self-disciplined. We can go to work. We can follow the rules. We can show up on time. We have boundaries. We have time, energy, and money. We have a higher purpose in going to work. Then we delay gratification. We have to go to work. We have to have self-control. We have pain before pleasure. We show up. Our reward system is our paycheck. And it's a good distraction. It's, because, it's not an avoidance if you're working for 8 hours, but so that's just a disclaimer there. But a good reward system is something as a distraction that you do, a 2-hour movie, an hour at dinner, going to walk around a store, going to get a massage. That's a reward system. And that makes me want to do it again. A motivation, if I get a paycheck, then I'm motivated to do it again. So I'm going to talk to you about a reward system with your teens, because right now, what's the reward system for going to school for the last 12, 13 years, if they're juniors and seniors? What's the reward system for 12 years of school, 13 years of school? I mean, that's the whole end year thing, right? Graduation, lagoon, just, your younger kids, field day. That was the reward system. And then presenting a little, play or concert or choir concert at the end of the year for the parents. That was the reward system for working all year long to show that they could, do that. So tell me in chat, we're going to chat about this. If you want to unmute yourself, what in the world are we doing for a reward system? Because I hear parents all the time say, my kid isn't motivated to make their bed. My kid isn't motivated to get online and do their homework. I'm badgering them. I'm pressuring them. I'm begging them to be motivated. Guess what? Look at the list of where all the things that you have to do to get to motivation, because that's a brain thing. Motivation is killed by fear. Okay? So that's why we have to emotionally coach, because fear is an unseen, but it's real. And our fear factors, our FFF, our fight, flight, or freeze, is a fear response brain. So motivation is killed by fear. We don't want to be motivated. It's fear. I don't want to learn how to do this online. I don't want to, try to do Zoom with, everybody. So that's the thing, is our motivation's killed. Think about my motivation's killed to get on my elliptical that I ordered online from Amazon because my gym's closed. And I haven't got on it, but I put it together. So my motivation's like, yeah, I want donuts for my reward system. I don't want to have a reward system of exercise. So I have to get into some kind of new routine, a fixed program first. Then I have to have responsibility and having a duty. And then I have to reassure myself that the fears are real, but how do we take back power? So any questions on this or comments on that? Or what have you found that we can help each other with as a reward system? Because I'm going to go through that and I'm going to give you lots of ideas, but I want to know what yours are first if you want to comment. Or if there's any chats. So
some people said video games, friends are a reward system at school, take a walk.
Yeah, walking is a reward. Yes. Okay. So video games and friends. So yeah. So is it really, so let's use video games because we'll talk about that. So here's the reward system, pain before pleasure, right? So here's the pain of doing your homework and cleaning your room or something. And when that is done, this is the reward. So we have to use it as here's the self-discipline. And when that's done, then we have a reward. If we just randomly don't have a balance with this and a boundary with this, it doesn't work. So see how self-discipline starts. This is from a book, Self-Discipline and Delaying Gratification, from a book called The Road Less Traveled, and it's from 1973. One of the best books I've ever found. It's a very well-known book, and it talks about delaying gratification, and I've taught about this before in another class. It was called Okay is a Magical Word for your younger kids. It has to be taught by 5, but if you didn't know how to delay gratification with your kid and teach that, what's the hurt in starting now? But teaching delaying gratification. What has happened in America right now has forced us to delay gratification. I can't go to the store. I can't go to this. I can't go to eat out. I have to wait for Amazon for 2 days, 3 days now instead of 1, right? Because it was like delayed. So it's like, I'm like, seriously? Like, right? We're not used to this. We are not used to delaying gratification. So we've got to get that back. Lots of studies show how that produces responsible and reliable children when they know how to delay gratification. So that's just that. So use it as a reward system. So remember when they were, kids were little, it was like, you get your dessert after dinner, you get your cookies after, we get to play after this, you get to watch a movie after this. That's delaying gratification, even if it's for 5 minutes. Manage impulses is super important. So, okay, so this is just another one of my 5 R's that I really, really love that I've come up with is for self-discipline. So it showed the 3 on the other page too. So here's the, for the first part of self-discipline is routine, responsibility, and reassurance. Then reward and resilience is the last one. Resilience is repeating. Resilience is the last one of motivation. I have resilience and I can instill hope by telling the story. This is super important right now. I kind of put this together for COVID. It's like, we have to have new traditions. We have to have play. We have to have creative time. And then we have to have choices, because that equals power. We cannot go through this without having any power. And so here's your choice, and then here's your reward. And then model emotions and validation, empathize with this, that we're all never done this before. It's all new, and just do your best. It's not a big deal. It's just right now, we just need to step back and do our best and model that for our kids, because we're doing our best of working at home, juggling everything, being in a heightened stress of fear, right? Our brains are not functioning the way we have. Adrenal glands going like crazy. I've talked a lot about those. So it gets physical, because then we go into burnout. So we have to combat that. So, and then set up a reward system like I talked about. And the book and these are referenced, the Love and Language book is referenced in the back. The Love and Logics book is referenced in the back. So a reward system by the teen's love language means that you can either, their love language, and you can have them take the test if you haven't ever done it, is time, service, gifts, which one am I missing? Touch, or which one am I missing? Okay, so time, touch, service, gifts, and words of affirmation is the one I'm missing. So your teen feels loved by those 5 things. And so reward system is a gift, is time. You take them out with you, you go on a hike, you go to the, drive up and get a treat, because that's their reward system. Okay. And instilling hope. We got to tell the story by, you know what? This is the story, and this is how we find hope. So this is why we have to talk, I'm just focusing on emotion today, because it's 4th of our balance, right? So the physical, like I mentioned, the social, the mental, the emotional and spiritual is 4th of our balance. So how do we have mental and social and physical balance? That's another class. We've done lots of parenting in the pandemic, or I did one on how to just take care of your mental health. It goes over all of this for adults. So that was just a basic one for everyone, how to take care of your mental health. So if that was something that you want to look at all of this balance and get more on that, then we can send you that recording. But this is just emotionally intelligent, grounded, connected. That's the emotion part and the spiritual part. We've got to get in balance with that to have better behavior, because remember, the behavior is last after that. So just a little bit of education here on different types of traumatic events that turn into long-term possible stuff, and loss, grief, and powerless, like I said. And in one of your handouts that Heather's going to send you, it's my wheel. It's just my emotional wheel like this. And here's the primary emotions we're going to talk about. Here's the secondary emotions. And what's on the outside is powerless, trauma, loss, grief is on one side. One side is worth, higher purpose. Oh, I feel understood. That's that side. So what happens in traumatic events is it's either acute stress, and that's a 1 month thing. We have these symptoms. So your kids might not have slept good. They're not in balance. We had a couple earthquakes that kept on reoccurring. And it was associated with sleep. So then that's an acute stress, right? Now we're into the adjustment. So this is number 2. It's a 6 month, it can be a 6 month thing. So we're just adjusting to everything. Oh, wait, we had summer the last 3 months almost, right? When we get done with May. And here we go into June. We're like, wait a minute, we just had summer. They were home for almost 3 months. And now we're going to do it again. Like that crazy, right? So it's like, I feel that way. I'm like, okay, so wait, that wasn't summer. This is summer. So it's just an adjustment, right? So then we go into, after that, if we're still having symptoms of this adjustment and we haven't calmed down our adrenal glands, we haven't calmed down our stress hormones, we haven't calmed down the fear, then it turns into post-traumatic. And that's 3 to 6 months plus. So just look at that. Make sure that you get help if it turns into post-traumatic, because that's long-term stuff. So this is the different kinds of stress that ends up being habitual. So burnout, the last stage of the 5 stages of burnout is habitual. So we don't want that. We just don't, for you or your kids or your teens or your family. So this is why this last little part, trauma, emotions of loss, grief, powerless, are unseen versus seen. So what we can see, we can make sense of. The unseen is really hard for our brain to figure out. And that's why this happens. So this is just another slide of like burnout examples. So look at this later, look at your symptoms and go check. Oh, I'm doing high levels of anxiety. Oh, wait, I'm worrying a lot. I'm moody. Oh, my teenager's moody. They feel overwhelmed. This sense of loneliness, isolation, depression. So behavioral symptoms, this is what happens in behavioral, and then what happens in physiological. So this is all signs of symptoms that I talked about in the last slide. Is here's some symptoms of stress. Just watch them. It also can be physiological or it can be mental. So we want to make sure we're ruling out the physical part and making sure it's not a physical problem. And so that means go to the doctor. Like, okay, wait, I'm having a rapid heart rate and I'm, so this is the one part of stress that is been recorded in statistics. So let me just go through this a little bit. And so you know what teens are dealing with and how this starts. So this is before COVID, of course, right? It's underestimated the impact of mental health and physical health on teens. It really is. So, but reports show that stress for school is number 1. So here we went with, here's stress, 83% of kids stress, teens mostly. So that's really technically 13 and up, but really it's like I'm saying, it's really, it's a 10, 11, and 12, we're seeing very high levels of stress now and anxiety. So 83% is just school. And now we just added this other, you know, function of stress to school, of doing it online and all that. So getting into college, 69%, financial concerns for their family, 65%. And then teens waking up at night. This is huge, 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 because I'm always about sleep, number one, because that's your physical health. We got to sleep. So physical is sleep, diet, exercise. So then the next one is overeating or under eating, 26%, skipping meals, 23%, due to stress. So they skip meals or they overeat. So 40% of teens report irritability and anger. Okay, so irritability and anger is a root issue of depression. Irritability is the word. So your teen might be just a little bit more irritable, and you're like, you're driving me crazy because you're just so irritable. Fatigue, tired, 31%, feeling overwhelmed due to stress in the past month. Very high numbers here, extremely high. So just know that, just a little bit of awareness. So it's like, what do we do about it? So these are the symptoms. Again, same thing with the other one, but a little different. So with the other little slide that I showed, this one, okay, here's some symptoms for stress and burnout. This is the stress levels of statistics in one survey and many others. And then here's the symptoms of stress and burnout. Just look at your symptoms, make sure what's going on. If you have multiple symptoms in each one of these, we're in the beginning stages of burnout. Okay, so any questions so far? I'm going to move on to primary and secondary emotions and how we're going to coach these emotions that come from stress. So interrupt me if you want. Oh, and one more thing, back to the statistics. I kind of did a little survey with like just close, friends and people around, and my own dealing with lots of family therapy and lots of teens that I counsel. This is some of the stuff that right now teens are dealing with is decision making, self-confidence, friends, the lack of friends, and just social stuff, depression, the fight with electronics, waste of time, just wasting time, anxiety, and just online schooling. So those are some of the things. And so if you're dealing with some of those things, if you have an idea of how you've kind of helped that with boundaries about electronics, like I said, here's a reward system, but here's the boundary, or your self-confidence, or just the loss and grief of the teens that don't get a walk at graduation. We're doing it like, I heard that, like I watched like Salt Lake City District is have a plan for graduation, but most districts are kind of don't have a plan yet, and how we're going to do this, if we're going to do drive-by, cars, or we're going to do virtual, Zoom, something like that. So text or interrupt me if you have any comments on that. We'll go to primary and secondary. So does anyone know really what primary and secondaries are? A lot of times secondaries are uncomfortable and unknown. And so we know what primary emotions are: mad, sad, shame. I put shame in there, and surprise and scared. So those are some primary, right? So when I'm working with younger kids, they should know 10 of those basic, they should know their primary, but then they should know 10 basic secondary emotions that come from the primary. So this is like an example of, here's this mad little, face. He's mad. That's just mad. That's a primary. So what happens is mad turns into frustration, insecurity, jealousy, outrage, resentment, loneliness, worthlessness, annoyed, hurt. So like I said, this depression of this low mood, because our adrenal glands and our fight or flight and our stress is so high that we are going into lots of fear. Mad is outraged, frustration from mad. So here's mad, I'm frustrated, then I'm outraged. So, and that's a fear, that can be a fear-based thing, but it's also just from the stress of the changes and the adjustment that's going on. So does that make sense to everybody? It's just those are secondary. And the thing is that's what we have to coach and figure out a little bit. It doesn't, if we're just mad, I feel mad. I'm really mad at you that you're yelling at me right now. Okay. I'm really feeling frustrated that you are talking to me that way, and I need you to. So it's always I feel and I need. I need you to either calm down, or we're going to have to talk about this at 3:00 today, because I will not allow you to talk to me that way. Or because, so the first thing is we always have to know what we're feeling, because it's always assertive language and communication is I feel disrespected. I feel frustrated right now. So I'm not going to yell at you. So I feel like I want to. So I'm going to have to talk to you later. So this is another example. So the root issue is what I was talking about, that loss, grief, and powerless. So here I'm sad, and now I'm bored and worried because I'm sad. So kids are not just sad. They're bored. They're worried. They feel powerless. They feel rejected. They feel anxious. They feel distress, overwhelmed, despair, discouraged, lonely, all those things. So those are all these secondary emotions that come from sad. And what's really going on, so my root emotion is loss, grief, powerless. So we have to treat the loss, grief, and powerless. So what do we do about loss and grief? Well, we grieve. I am telling you, our teens are grieving right now. And grief and sadness, remember, depression, sad mood is irritability. So you're going to be irritable. You're going to be irritable because you're grieving. That's anger too. So it's like, so it's sad, anger, mad is grief. So I'm just hopefully we can understand that a little more. And maybe you know that your teen is grieving, but it's a loss, grief, and powerless time. So it's like we're grieving the end of the year. So how do we get through that? We'll talk about. So 5 steps of emotional coaching. So how do we coach and treat loss, grief, and powerless? 1, we have to become aware and intelligent of all emotions, recognize an opportunity for teaching and intimacy, listen, validate, reflect, coach the child, label the feeling, accept, communication for your understandings, and accept of the emotion through empathy. That's a little tip there. And then set limits and problem solve. Okay. So that's how we do it. So I go through each one of these individually. You can look at these later. I'll kind of just skim through them, but it's like, okay, here's how we do. Number 1 is become aware of intelligence and all of our emotions. And then here's a little tip for teens and parents. Some of them are just for parents, some of them are for teens too. But really, your teen, 10 and up, 12, 13, 14, can get this little basket, bag, section, something to put outside of their bed. You don't do these things inside the bed. We only sleep in our bed, to help us get through mad, sad, and happy. So the basic stuff. So if I'm really mad, I'm going to have something in that bag that I can punch, I can squeeze, I can Play-Doh, a squeeze ball, all those things, and use your 5 senses with that. So that's an example of a tip that, young and old, it doesn't really matter. You can just, adjust it for how old they are. So I love coloring pages and tracing pages and something to trace and color with in those times, and say, you know what, let's go self-regulate right now. I'm not going to listen to, so you can either do this tantrum here or there, but you're not doing it at the dinner table. So you have a boundary of where they do it. So then it's like, oh, you know what, I think it's time to go to your room and do that emotional regulation and figure out what's going on. So whiteboards to color with, a journal to talk about what they're feeling, and they can write that down. One of the best things a teen can do is mind dump, and just mind dump it all down. and then rip it up, or, you know, or keep it as a history, so they can kind of look back and go, wow, that was a really strong day that I had, and that was a day that was really tough. So help your teen find 10 plus secondary emotions for the day also. So that's the tip of like how to become emotional intelligent and be aware. And there's no shame, it's just emotions, and we've got to allow them to have them, because number one is, if we're not aware, we're not shaming them for their emotions, then we're going to teach them to stuff them. Stuffers turn into volcanoes. That's an anger management term. I teach anger management classes to adults. So yeah, stuffing doesn't work. So how to unstuff it is be mad, stuff, put, this stuffed animals in the corner, have a mad bag, journal about it, so we're not stuffing it, draw about it, color about it, all those kind of things. So recognizing the opportunity to teach is really important. So show that you are their ally and face struggle together. I was listening to kind of like a podcast yesterday about parenting and how therapists are helping parents through this with, so I'm a play therapist also. So here's play therapy or art therapy. And she was talking about how we can struggle together, all of us, because we can say, we've never done this before. We're doing the best we know how, and you're doing a really good job at this, this, and this. So empathy, right? And I'm struggling, and I'm not sleeping very good after that earthquake. And wow, what are we all going to do? Because this house is irritable right now, and it's tense. And I think we need to sit down and figure out what it is that we can do better with this strong emotion of tense. What is it that we're doing that is causing some tension? Well, it makes sense. Our fear response brain is in action all the time. So we don't need to fix it. We just need to empathize and sit in it. Sit in the struggle together. That's really tough. That's really tough for people. It's really hard for my couples that I, am with, to sit in that tense emotion, just sit in it and just be okay without fixing it. Okay. So you got to model that. That's really tough. So it's like, wait, I'm burned out. Wait, I'm not doing so good. It's like, well, then that means that we all empathize with that. And we go, okay, let's just sit down in this strong emotion and sit in it. But we're not fixing it. We're just sitting in it. So, and this is a little bit of a quote, a break here on empathy. Brene Brown, I have all of her references at the end of this too. When you get to a place where you understand that love and belonging, your worthiness is a birthright and not something you have to earn, anything is possible. So that's empathy, and love and belonging is part of her research, of course, and she's a vulnerability researcher on shame. So number 3, listen, validate, and reflect. So you can listen in many ways to your kid. Physical, of course, we all know that it is not what words are saying. It is physical evidence. It's what their 5 senses are doing, what their facial expression is, and it's like, wow, it seems like this is happening, but we still don't correct. We don't fix at this point. No questions. So the best thing about this is just stating what you see. I see that you've got those big alligator tears. Well, I see that you're really irritable, and you just jump down the throat of your little brother, right? Or, and it's like, it seems like you're super upset. And they'll correct you if you guess, it seems like, and that's the next slide, like some verbiage of how to do that. But what we don't want to do is jump to conclusions and mind read and rigid think and overgeneralize and discount the positive. Those are all thinking errors. So we just got to watch our thinking errors, because what we want to do is jump to those conclusions. But if you say it seems like you're upset because you're kicking your feet really good, then that's not jumping to conclusions. You have facts, right? So thinking errors are not facts. So, and here's number 4. After you've listened, empathize, been in their space, you've sit in their space, you've sat in that strong emotion, if you need to, if you can, State what you see here, what they ought to feel. That's a big no-no. So when we state, oh, you know what, you should stop this. You should go tell your brother, this and that. That's not what it is, what you need to do right now. You just label the emotion. So here's some verbiage. You look blank. It seems like blank. It's normal for you to be upset right now. It's normal for you to have anger over loss and grief, because like I said, our teenagers, I promise you, are grieving. They're grieving their friends. They're grieving the routine. They're grieving. Now, it sounds really negative, right? Let me tell you what they are doing also. They're connecting in different ways than they never have had to before. I've seen parents and kids sit on their couch and do Zoom sessions with me and actually connect. So this is a time where we can say, okay, I'm going to sit in your space. Even though this is tough, let's just work through this together. But I see a lot of positive stuff going on too. But putting a number on it, so there's the positive emotions, right? Which I don't do positive or negative, but you get what I'm saying. So like, okay, here's the happy, here's the peaceful. When's the last time you felt? It seems like you're being really peaceful right now and you're just sitting and you feel content. And I haven't seen you like that for a while. That's just stating. And that's what you do. You just state what you see and what you hear, not what the child ought to feel. But you go, okay, here's a secondary emotion that I can say that you just feel content to me. Your energy is just good. So I can see this. Your body feels like that. I see that your body is doing this. I see that you are crying, kicking, yelling, shaking, in those extreme moments of panic. So, and we need to keep track of those and see what treatment we need to do about those. So this is a big one for a tip. And this is what I've had kids do in session, okay, is list what they don't have power over and then what they do have power over. Because remember that third one is powerless. So I had a kid tell me, because we were in Zoom, a kiddo, she was a little bit younger, like she was right preteen, I think, 12 or so. And she listed all the things that she misses, all of her losses. And then she wrote down, and then told me all of her things that she has power over those missing. So for example, she misses walking to school every morning. And she just really enjoyed that. That was the beginning of the day. It was a routine. Her brain is sending dopamine to her brain and serotonin when she's doing that. So I said, what can you have power over with that? She goes, I can go for a walk every morning and pretend I'm going to school. And she can go around the block and go for a walk before she does her homework. That's training her brain that she's getting ready for school in the same exact routine. This is so important. My kids and your kids are very brilliant in coming up with really fantastic ideas and emotions. They want freedom. They want to feel free. And that's the biggest one that comes up with me when we're doing imagery or something that they're lacking, is they want freedom and power. And that's what we want. So just watch that and then say, okay, what are your powerless feelings? And what can you have power over? Because that's where we say, here's some power over this. What can you do in a routine to help you get through that? So 5, set limits and problem solve. This is kind of my favorite one because it has to do with your value systems. Just look at this. This is the last part of actually where we problem solve. And we have to set limits first according to your value system, according to the choices that your child has chosen for the solutions. That's just how it works. So you got to identify the goal, you got to have a value system behind it, and then you have to have a solution, and then the child chooses a solution. Say, so here's the example I gave before, is you can throw a fit and you really are kicking your feet really good, but you're being disrespectful at the dinner table during dinner time. So you can either do it there or there, but you're not doing it here. And the child chooses. But you have to have that set up ahead of time so they know. And then here's a good distraction. Go to your room, color on your board, go call a friend, go cry, whatever you need to do. If you want to throw stuffed animals at the corner, whatever. for the younger ones. Or so those are all good distractions to help them self-regulate. So boosting happy hormones, here's a list of fun things. Now this is really important on the other side of natural things, and then SSRIs are your medications that are serotonin inhibitors that help neurotransmitters work. It doesn't produce serotonin or dopamine, but it just helps transmit them, hold them. So we have to do the other side here: sleep, diet, creativity, movement, connection, music, for the serotonin and dopamine to produce. We've got to produce it first before SSRIs work. But all these other things help produce it. We have to have a really good immune system, okay? Guess what happens when you're isolated, not going out in the sun, being in your home, sanitizing? Your immune system goes down. It actually goes down because it's not working against all those germs that we're normally our immune system's working against. So we have to boost our immune system, because also the stress hormones are killing our body, because they're producing more stress hormones than the serotonin and dopamine. So we have to combat that, right? So we have to sleep. We have to have walking, tracing, coloring, pets, anything creative to produce the serotonin and dopamine that we're losing every day. Okay. So if you want more about that, you can email me. I'm Care. I should put that at the beginning of the PowerPoint. But I'm just Carol, CARYL @blomquist.com. You can email me about questions like that. So real quick, here's a little checklist. So we've talked about play activities, limited time screen, increasing, the routine. Here's some Utah Safe app. If your teen does not have that on their phone, so sometimes we do discipline with taking away their phone, and sometimes that doesn't work. Most of the time it won't work. So we need to have the Utah Safe app downloaded on their phone. It's a really good resource. They can text, they can talk about one of their friends, confidential, they can just ask questions, they can talk about anything: stress, suicidality. We had a whole class, I think it was last week, on suicide. If your kiddo is struggling with suicidal thoughts, I've had multiple kids disclose that they're like, yeah, I just don't really care to be around. We need to talk, they need to talk to someone. Domestic violence is up. Your uni crisis line's there, and our 24/7 Blomquist Health crisis line. So creating a safe place, connection, reducing thinking errors, I talked about, creating a reward system. So there's a little checklist. One really fun thing, there's all the references. One little fun story, real good. I want to, then we can have discussion a little bit and see what we kind of came up with some ideas. This is an idea. Well, I've always done imagery, lots of creative. It's called I'm going to play, be creative, and imaginary. So imaginary fun is one of the best things that you can combat any of this stress with. We have to imagine. So as I had that little girl say, what you can imagine when you're going around the block that you're going to school. That really helped me. I just really miss walking to school. That was her first thing that she said. I miss walking to school. So let's pretend we're walking to school. Another thing, we went through spring break and year-end stuff that we might not be able to do in May and June and July. Lots of trips planned, right? Hopefully you had some trips planned and they've been canceled. I have a family that was going to Hawaii for graduation and the end of the year thing, and it was all planned. They're going to be gone, several days. And I said, you know what? I have an idea. I want you to go spend $300-400. And what you would have, you spend thousands of, taking her whole family to Hawaii. I said, let's, have a good idea. For 4 or 5 days over the weekend, or 4 days, whatever you can do, every single day is Hawaii. Food, decoration, music, margaritas, whatever it is, umbrellas, we're going to get in our swimming suits, we're going to get in our shorts, and it is going to be Hawaii week. You've got to trick the brain and create a reward system in different creative ways. So that's just an idea. You can do that with anything. So I encourage you to get creative and go, okay, you know what? Let's do graduation. Let's do this. Let's do a party. Let's do Hawaii. Let's go to Moab, whatever it is that you were going to do, and keep it going. So I'll stop for a minute so we can have some comments.
So we have a lot of questions. I saved them all for the end. So
sweet.
Let's do it. It's going to probably go over 1 o'clock by a little bit. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who came. And yeah, so these are some great questions. Okay, this one said, I try to use reward systems for my 11-year-old based on things she likes, such as fun screen time, playing outside, and more. As soon as we place a work requirement to get the reward, she changes her attitude and no longer wants to care about the reward. What do you suggest?
Well, I mean, so she has no motive. So she's self-disciplined. We haven't gone past self-discipline, right? So she doesn't care anymore because it's just too much effort. So her brain shuts it down. Her brain just shutting it down. So it's like, so there is no reward. There is no, it's like, but wait, they still have to do their homework. Wait, they still have to do their chores. They still have to clean up their room. So then we go into consequences. Then there's just a consequence. And she chooses that because the number 5 on the emotional coaching is limits. Limit. So we, especially for her age, is, okay, so now what's the consequence? You don't get a reward. Here's the consequence. And you come up with those ahead of time. And that's what number 5 is all about. 5 is super, super important on the list. So yeah, I mean, they have to learn self-discipline. And so now it's a takeaway instead of a reward. Okay. What else, Heather? You're muted.
Okay, so someone said, are you creating the reward or asking them what they would like to do or would like?
So there's always 2 choices. So here's the reward, here's the consequence if if it's not done by a certain time. So here's the choice. Do you want to do your spelling words before dinner or after dinner? Well, I choose after dinner. So say they don't do it after dinner, then you already have the consequence set up. Well, then you have to go to bed early and you lose your rewards for tomorrow until it's done or something, so it's their choice. Would you like to have this consequence or this choice? But you give them, and this is all love and logics. This is like, here's your 2 choices in the reward and 2 choices in the consequence, and they choose your limits in those.
Okay. The next one says, my oldest teen has struggled with sleep for quite a while, ever since the earthquake, and they said we live very near the epicenter. Combined with everything else, it has gotten worse. She can't fall asleep until 2 to 3 a.m. How can I best help her?
Okay, email me, but I'll give you really quick. This is my number 1 with anybody, any human. We have to sleep because our REM sleep repairs the brain. We will not function in any other area of balance if we do not sleep. Our number 1 is sleep. So very high doses of magnesium at night, a routine. You do not lay in your bed. Number 1 tip, besides supplements and helping daytime stuff, all that list of things I gave was the supplements, magnesium citrate at night for everyone. It's a natural sleep aid, muscle relaxer. We're depleted in it, and we have to have vitamin D3 during the day so we produce our own melatonin. And so, but then here's the fear factor of the crisis of the trauma. So what we have to do is train our brain again to not lay in our bed laying awake. So it is, if after 20 minutes laying in our bed and we're still awake, we have to get out of it. So she has a bean bag and she has all that little bag of stuff, like we talked about, like anything for her to do, color, read, draw, journal, outside of the bed. She cannot lay in her bed wide awake. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, it's the same rule. You have to get out of your bed if it's after 20 minutes and do something and then try to go back to sleep. Because we want to train the brain. And also you can use hyper sleep. It's on YouTube to fall asleep too. You're training your brain to fall asleep.
Okay, and then someone said, even with having reward choices that follow their love language, it doesn't matter to one of mine. Any suggestions?
So it doesn't, their reward system doesn't matter. Like they don't care.
I think that's what she means.
Yeah. So, and then here's their love language, and you know what their love language is. Say their love language is gifts, and so you have a little bag of just for them, little things that they love wrapped up, like dollar store stuff or a candy bar or a gift card or something. You know, you don't have to go big. It's not buying. It's not praising. It's appreciation or small gifts of. So if their love language is gifts, then their reward system is they get to choose something out of there, or they get to, you know, at the end of the week they get their allowance and blah blah blah, right? So they get gifts. So if they don't care, once again, that just tells me they're a little low mood. Their fear factors kicked in and they have no motivation. So self-discipline starts up there. That's why it's really tough. How do we get our kids to be self-disciplined? I mean, and want something. The only way is to have a reward system somehow so they're motivated to do it again. But I'm telling you, it's super, super tough. So do the best you can. And once again, if they don't see the reward system, then there's a consequence. And then they'll learn, you know, maybe that way. But that causes responsible kids to say, yeah, if you don't show up at your job when you're 18, 19, or 20, so we're going to teach self-discipline now, you get fired. So.
Okay, the next one says, I have a son that will talk about feelings and another son that will not open up at all. When I ask how he's feeling, he says, I'm good, even when he was going in for heart surgery. Any ideas? Maybe it's his age.
Trauma. No, it's not his age. It's just two different personalities. He's a stuffer. So we have to try to combat that in different ways, in creative ways. So don't ask the question, how are you feeling? Number one, we don't ask questions, we state. It seems like you don't want to talk about your emotions as much right now. It seems like, because the fear factor, right? The fight, flight, or freeze cuts and shuts that down. So we're just in fight, flight, or freeze. So he's in freeze mode. So he stuffs. Freeze is also passive, is also stuffing. So he's more passive. So that will, you know, so you just got to watch the volcanoing. So it's not a big deal. It's just state what he's doing. When you see a secondary emotion, you're going to emotionally coach that and say, hey, it seems like you're blank. Don't ask him how he feels, because he's not going to tell you. So, hey, I really appreciate you doing the dishes so quickly. It seems like you are blank. That's it. You're just helping, you're modeling and coaching. That's it. We're not trying to fix anything. We're just modeling. So that's the best way to do it with a kid that's closed down.
Okay, that's all the questions that came in. So
Cool.
Thank you everyone for being here. We're glad that we could all get together. Like I said, I'll be sending out this recording probably later today, if not in the morning. And then feel free to go to our website on our workshop page. You can register for any of them that are on there, and you can
and a
send
couple
them to your friends, family, neighbors, anyone. So we've opened up our workshops to people, to anyone, so they don't have to have our benefits. So
yes. And then in 2 weeks, I'm just doing one on anxiety, just straight anxiety.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. In 2 weeks, it's just going to be on anxiety. It won't be like emotional coaching that. It's just facts and really good information about anxiety. And then you can really see if it is anxiety, because we call everything anxiety, right? So
cool. Yeah,
cool.
There's some good ones on there. So yeah, thank you everybody. And I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Heather.